Hello, welcome to a new tutorial presented by the SA Charles Review. In this tutorial, we're going to see adrenal endocrine pathology. And with other pathology, we see that adrenal endocrine pathology are going to be based on hypersecretion of adrenal hormones and hyposecretion of adrenal hormones. And we first start with hypersecretion of adrenal hormone called hyperaldosteronism. In this case, the hyperadrenalism of the zona fasciculata resulting to a Cushing syndrome. So, disease, you have hyperadrenalism or Cushing syndrome, increased level of mineralocorticoid and glucocorticoid. So, the Cushing syndrome can result both from exogenous and endogenous causes. So, you have Cushing syndrome which can result from endogenous causes. The endogenous causes of Cushing syndrome can be an adrenocortical adenoma, or it can be a Cushing disease, an adenoma of adrenocorticotrophic hormone, adrenocorticotrophic pituitary adenoma. So these are the endogenous causes. While the exogenous causes of Cushing syndrome is when the person take excess of steroids. So administration of exogenous corticosteroid is most common overall of this syndrome. So the most common portion is administration of the exogenous corticosteroids. So epidemiology, nothing is written on it. Pathophysiology, nothing is written on it. We have the consequence and manifestation of Cushing syndrome. So we've initially said a simple way to memorize the Cushing syndrome pathologies. We said that you take your skin, you look from above, from superficial to deep. From superficial to deep on your body, you have the skin, then you have a dermis consisting of fat, then you have muscles, then you have bone. On the skin, Cushing syndrome is associated with skin atrophy. So the signs of skin atrophy are number 1, purple striae, number 2, you have paper skin, and number 3, you have loss of flexibility. The second part, you look at the length of the dermis. In the dermis, you have fat. So we speak with the fatty portion with respect of Cushing syndrome. Fatty portion with respect of Cushing syndrome, we have central obesity, we have moon face, and we have buffalo horn. This is due to accumulation of fatty acid, due to conversion of proteins, and the conversion of triglycerides to form the glucose. Because the main aim of cortisol, which are corticoids, are used in the conversion of other sources of food to glucose. So, as it's converting from other sources of food to glucose, is when the triglycerides are going to be converted to fatty acid, and the fatty acids are going to pass into the body. So, this is going to result to the atrophy of the distal part of the body. But since the fatty acid pass into blood and enter now into the bloodstream, what's going to happen is that there is going to be the obesity now of the central part of the body. So you have atrophy of distal part of the body and obesity of central part of the body. Having central obesity, buffalo horn, and moon face. Now the next portion on the dissection of your body, you have the muscles. After the muscle portion of the Cushing syndrome is with respect to muscle atrophy and muscle weakness. And the last part of Cushing syndrome is going to be osteoporosis. So consequences, manifestation. So you have hypertension. So hypertension, you have weight gain in the central portion. You have weight gain in the central portion of the body and weight loss in the distal portion of the body. You have fatigability, you have weakness. So truncal obesity with wasting of arms and legs, moon face, accumulation of fat, and this. With respect to muscle, you have muscle weakness and atrophy. The inhibition of uptake of glucose by cells lead to hyperglycemia, glucosuria, and polydipsia. So glucose now, what is going to the cortisol level is going to cause an increased level of glucose. Now a complication of Cushing syndrome is going to be diabetes insipidus. Why? Because it's going to cause an excessive glucose level. So diabetes is excessive glucocorticoids cause an excessive glucose level because it converts other sources of food to glucose. But the problem is that now the glucose now we put in the blood does not have excessive insulin to cause it to enter now into the body. So this causes excessive glucose intolerance, and thus diabetes insipidus. The form of diabetes insipidus now is going to be secondary diabetes insipidus from the Cushing syndrome or hyper production of cortisol. There is bone resorption and causing osteoporosis, thinning of skin on the top of the hand, the signs of Cushing syndrome. So investigation, we have hyperglycemia, ketosis. Now this one is for diabetes. So now the presentation of the gland depends upon the source of adrenocortical hormone and cortisol. Again, with increased cortisol level, you have Cook-Hyland changes. So you have Cook-Hyland changes occur in anterior pituitary, Cook-Hyland eosinophilic condensation. So these are the micro presentation of the gland, depend upon the source, if the source is ACTH or cortisol. Now, when you see at the level of the pituitary gland, Cook-Hyland change occur in anterior pituitary gland. Cook-Hyland is eosinophilic condensation when the cytoplasm is ACTH secreting pituitary basophil. So you have Cook-Hyland changes, you have changes in the pituitary gland when it is of secondary type. So it's coming from pituitary gland, and this one, when the Cushing syndrome comes from pituitary gland due to ACTH secretion, is there anything in the pituitary gland? In this case, you have Cook-Hyland changes, which is ACTH secreting from the pituitary basophils. Is going to be called this Cushing syndrome is going to be called Cushing disease when it comes from the pituitary gland ACTH secretion. Now you have macro and gross presentation of the gland depend upon the source of ACTH or cortisol. Describe ACTH dependent causes of Cushing syndrome. You need to know that Cushing syndrome, it can have a cause which is ACTH dependent, that is come from a pituitary gland, or ACTH independent, comes from the adrenal gland itself. So ACTH dependent adenoma, also called Cushing disease, is responsible for 70 to 8% of cases of endogenous Cushing syndrome. So 70 to 8% of endogenous Cushing is from Cushing disease. Ectopic ACTH secretion is from small cell lung cancer, and this small cell lung cancer was also involved in case of AGH secretion when you had the syndrome of inappropriate AGH in the body. So this patient usually presents with symptoms related to lungs disease rather than adrenal disease. So he has symptoms of lung disease rather than adrenal disease, but ACTH is secreted. Ectopic secretion of carcinoid tumor. You can have also ectopic secretion of carcinoid tumor. This patient usually present with symptoms of adrenal disease. They can also present. So the carcinoid tumors can be present at the level of the liver. So this patient usually present with symptoms of adrenal disease. Other tumor producing adrenocorticotropic hormone include pancreatic. Other tumor producing, you have pancreatic tumor. You can have thyroid tumor, and you can have adrenal tumor. Now, describe ACTH independent causing Cushing syndrome. Adrenal gland adenoma or hyperplasia. So now the ACTH independent causes you have from the gland itself. You can have adrenal gland adenoma or hyperplasia. Adenoma or more common hyperplasia as ACTH independent of Cushing syndrome. You have also hyperplasia. So give the diagnosis of Cushing syndrome. So you have increased 24 urine cortisol level. So when you see the cortisol level, Cushing syndrome is going to be high. Now you can do a diagnosis to differentiate the ACTH dependent from ACTH independent Cushing syndrome. When you want to differentiate ACTH dependent from ACTH independent, use dexamethasone. Dexamethasone is used to inhibit ACTH. So if it is ACTH independent, dexamethasone is not going to inhibit it, ACTH, and thus it's not going to reduce the level of cortisol. While it is ACTH dependent, the dexamethasone is going to reduce the level. So this is the case here. So suppression of dexamethasone. When you use dexamethasone, you see that ACTH secreting pituitary adenoma is going to be suppression, yes. But in case of adrenal hyperplasia, functional adrenal hyperplasia, or ectopic ACTH production, you're not going to have. So this is going to test for Cushing disease. So all these are ACTH independent. So now you have hypoaldosteronism. Hypoaldosteronism can be divided into two main parts. You have a primary hypoaldosteronism or adrenal insufficiency, and you have a secondary hypoaldosteronism. Primary hypoaldosteronism is adrenal insufficiency, while secondary hypoaldosteronism is not adrenal insufficiency because it does not originate from adrenal glands. So it is not the adrenal which is actually insufficient, which is not working. So it's from the another source. So now you have primary hypoaldosteronism. All of them, the primary and secondary hypoaldosteronism, can be divided again with respect to the time into acute and chronic. So you are going to have an acute primary adrenal hypoaldosteronism, and you can have a chronic primary hypoaldosteronism. You can also have an acute secondary hypoaldosteronism and have a chronic secondary hypoaldosteronism. So this is based on this particular division that you can have all these diseases. So now let's see the different hypoaldosteronism with respect to acute primary adrenal insufficiency, chronic primary adrenal insufficiency, and chronic secondary hypoaldosteronism. So acute primary adrenal cortical insufficiency or acute primary adrenal insufficiency. So this is a particular disease, acute primary adrenal insufficiency, low level of cortisol production from adrenal gland which occur suddenly. So you see the word acutely. So primary adrenal cortical insufficiency, so it comes from the adrenal cortex. So you have sudden low level of cortisol from the adrenal cortex itself, adrenal gland from itself. So the cause of it is going to be rapid withdrawal of exogenous steroid. So when you have a rapid withdrawal of exogenous steroid in patient on chronic corticosteroid therapy, you are going to have it. Acute exacerbation of chronic adrenal insufficiency. So you have, this is the main cause involved in acute adenocortical insufficiency. You can have anticoagulant therapy. You have postoperative anticoagulant therapy is going to cause a hemorrhage. You can have this rapid, and you can have a Waterhouse syndrome. So this Waterhouse syndrome is a hemorrhage of the posterior abdominal wall. The Waterhouse syndrome is arising as a result of the hemorrhage of the posterior abdominal wall. So this hemorrhage of the posterior abdominal wall is due to the bleeding of the renal arteries. And you know that the renal arteries are supplying the adrenal glands. If there is no sudden supply of the adrenal glands, you will realize that you are going to have an acute primary adrenal insufficiency. So you have epidemiology not instead of it, pathology not instead of it. The consequence, symptoms, severe abdominal pain. So what's going to happen is that you are going to have sudden nausea because of excess. You are going to have vomiting, excessive vomiting. You have excessive diarrhea because there is excessive water loss from the body. There is abdominal pain, and there is nausea, vomiting, somnolence, and the sign here is hypotension. So these are the signs of aldosterone level reduction. So but these signs are very acute. So you are going to have vomiting, diarrhea, nausea, abdominal pain, and hypotension. But if it is due to Waterhouse syndrome, you are going to have the lateral part of your abdomen are going to be reddish. So these are the syndrome of Waterhouse syndrome. Explain some causes of acute primary adrenal insufficiency. So let's explain the rapid withdrawal of exogenous steroid. Here we say that normally when you have exogenous steroid, what's going to happen is that it's going to reduce the production of ACTH because these exogenous steroids have a same conformation as the endogenous steroids are found inside the body. So exogenous steroids are going to cause the negative feedback on they are going to cause a negative feedback on the ACTH of the cortical trough on the pituitary gland. So the ACTH is going to be reduced, And upon a rapid or sudden removal from the exogenous steroids, you realize that what there's going to be, since there's HCH reduction, there's going to be a reduction of the glucocorticoids, and that sudden drop is not doing the adrenal gland is not going to sufficiently produce, and they're going to cause the signs and symptoms of adrenal insufficiency. Waterhouse-Frederick syndrome. Now, in Waterhouse-Frederick syndrome, I initially told you that it's a hemorrhage of the posterior abdominal wall, and that hemorrhage of posterior abdominal wall can be due to a sepsis in Neisseria, so associated with hemorrhagic necrosis of adrenal gland. So you have a hemorrhage in posterior abdominal wall, which can be due to a sepsis resulting to a burst of the arteries in the posterior abdominal wall, resulting to a Neisseria meningitis and a pseudomonal. NB, the cause of chronic primary adrenocortical insufficiency is Addison disease. So for chronic primary, we said that initially that all the hypoadrenalism are going to be divided into primary and secondary. The primary is going to be divided into acute and chronic. We have already seen the acute. Now for the chronic part, we need to know that this chronic primary adrenal cortical insufficiency is also similar to Addison disease. So now let's speak of Addison disease. Chronic primary insufficiency, reduction of adrenal hormone level in long run. So the cause of Addison disease, we have the cause Addison disease. We have in Addison disease particularly, we have autoantibodies to 21 hydroxylase and 17 hydroxylase. So you have antibodies against 21 hydroxylase and 17 hydroxylase, and 21 hydroxylase is important in the production of cortisol and mineralocorticoids. So you are not going to produce mineralocorticoids in case of Addison disease. And also 17 hydroxylase because 17 hydroxylase is important in the production of androgens. So Addison disease, you have autoantibodies against 21 hydroxylase, which produces cortisol and mineralocorticoid, and 17 hydroxylase produces the androgens. So you are going to realize that there is no production of the mineralocorticoid, glucocorticoid, nor androgens from the different layers of the adrenal cortex. So you have the causes of the chronic. You have mainly the main causes is Addison disease. Number one. Number two, you have metastatic tumors can infiltrate into the adrenal gland. You have infection, e.g. tuberculosis, histoplasma coccidiosis, amyloidosis, and hemochromatosis. Now, consequences / manifestation, you have symptoms and you have signs. Now, Addison disease, the main sign there, you are going to have hyponatremia. The sign of hyponatremia, you need to know the sign of hyponatremia, which are hypotension. The sign of hyponatremia is going to cause cardiac dysarrhythmias and all that. So the high sign of you have hypotension, decreased aldosterone, hyperpigmentation. Also have hyperpigmentation because Addison disease is going to cause low level of Addison. Now your low level of adrenal hormones. Now this is going to cause excessive hyperpigmentation occurs because you have excessive stimulation of the adrenal cortex for the adrenocortical hormone production. Now adrenocortical hormone has a precursor called propionamineralocortin, and that propionamineralocortin has a melanin portion. So the melanocyte stimulating hormone portion is going to cause also an excessive stimulation of the melanocyte, causing you a hyperpigmentation. So Addison disease has different signs. You have sign of hyperkalemia, sign of hyponatremia, you have the hypotension, decreased aldosterone, and hyperpigmentation. Symptoms, you have weakness, you have gastrointestinal disturbance, you have weight loss, you have salt craving. We have symptoms, weakness, gastrointestinal disturbance, weight loss, salt craving. Investigation, STH is increased. You have MSH is increased, reduced level of adrenal hormone, and ACH stimulation test negative. Here you have an ACH stimulation test negative. Here you enter ACTH into with the AC stimulation test, you enter ACTH into the body. When you enter ACTH in the body, you realize that with Addison disease, it is not going to cause an increase in the level of adrenal hormones. This is because of the autoimmune destruction of the adrenal glands enzymes, which produce the different hormones. So, give some important point of chronic. Patients have increased pigmentation at pressure points, and they said that the increased pigmentation is because of increased level of melanocyte stimulating hormone, and the melanocyte stimulating hormone come from the propionylanocortin. Propionylanocortin is a precursor of ACTH. So upon production of ACTH, you also produce melanocyte stimulating hormone. So somebody that produces high ACTH is going to be mostly very dark because of the production of melanocyte stimulating hormone. So the patient with adrenal insufficiency due to pituitary disorders. Note that patient with adrenal insufficiency due to pituitary disorders secondary to hyperpigmentation. So now, if now you have a problem, a patient now, note that patient with adrenal insufficiency due to pituitary disorder do not have hyperpigmentation. So now, if you have instead low level of ACTH, and that's resulting in low level of adrenal hormone secretion, you realize that you will not have hyperpigmentation. So when a patient has a hypoadrenalism or a hypo secretion or hypoadrenalism due to a reduced level of ACTH, you realize that there is no associated hyperpigmentation. So hyperpigmentation is a guide to differentiate between a symptom between ACTH dependent hypoadrenalism and ACTH independent hypoadrenalism. Now, secondary hypoadrenalism disease, reduction of adrenal hormone effect due to an effect of an other organ, e.g. pituitary gland. So suppression of adrenal gland due to exogenous steroids. So you see that with secondary, again, you can have an exogenous steroid, but here it's not withdrawal. So it's when you take exogenous steroid that you have suppression of the adrenal gland. So you can have pituitary gland disruption or suppression of adrenal gland due to exogenous steroid. Now, this is secondary, and this case of secondary, you can still have acute and chronic, but here we have not divided, you have only involved secondary. But because we initially told you that hypoadrenalism is divided into primary and secondary, the primary was acute chronic, but in this case of secondary, don't divide acute chronic and consider as whole. So you have the causes are pituitary gland destruction, suppression of adrenal gland due to exogenous steroids. Epidemiology, nothing seen on that. Pathology, nothing seen on that. The consequence of hypoadrenalism, the main cause of hypoadrenalism are going to be weakness, weight loss, anorexia, nausea, and vomiting. These are the main consequences of hypoadrenalism. Now you can add other consequences depending on a particular disease or not, but the main consequences of hypoadrenalism are weakness, weight loss, anorexia, nausea, vomiting. So weakness, weight loss, anorexia, nausea, and vomiting. Investigation: adrenal hormone decreased, but patients do not have decreased level of aldosterone ACTH decrease. So here you have this is due to the ACD. This is due to the pituitary gland. It's secondary. So you imply here that you have low level of ACTH, and also here you have low level of adrenal hormones, and the adrenal stimulation test here is positive. That is, if you give a patient ACTH, you see that the cortisol level, adrenal hormone, are going to increase. So now you need to know that again that there is hypopituitarism. Another secondary cause can be due to the renin-aldosterone system. So the renin-aldosterone system, if there is excess renin stimulation, they can realize that there can be excess melanocorticoid production. Or if the renin-aldosterone system is not stimulated, you realize that there can be hypoadrenism. So melanocorticoid level normal because aldosterone, And now you also see that in secondary hypoaldosteronism, the mineralocorticoid level are normal because the aldosterone secretion does not depend mainly from ACTH but also from the RAS renal angiotensine system. So hyperkalemia and salt craving do not occur here. So this is why you have the signs of weakness, nausea, vomiting, but without the signs of hyponatremia. Hyponatremia can still occur, but because of increased ADH. Now, how distinguishing primary and from secondary. So we have primary hypoaldosteronism, ACH is increased. In secondary, ACH is decreased. We said that in primary, ACH is increased because adrenal gland is mainly affected. So it's going to, no negative feedback is going to apply to the pituitary gland. So ACH is going to increase. While secondary is come from the pituitary gland. So the cause actually is ACH reduction. Aldosterone level are normal or decrease in primary aldosteronism. So they can be normal or decrease in primary aldosteronism, but they are mainly decreased in primary aldosteronism because we said that in primary aldosteronism we have 21 hydrolase enzyme which is not working, and that 21 hydrolase enzyme is going to the production of mineralocorticoids which involves aldosterone, and it's normal. It's only normal in secondary hypoaldosteronism. In secondary, the aldosterone level is normal. So the secondary hypoaldosteronism is less severe compared to primary hypoaldosteronism. So now, ACH stimulation test, you see that it's positive in case of ACH stimulated test is positive in case of secondary hypoaldosteronism and negative in case of primary hypoaldosteronism. Now we have congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Now the causes of hyperaldosteronism. So now we come back again to hyperaldosteronism to explain the different causes of hyperaldosteronism. We have congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia increased number of cells of adrenal gland at stage of pregnancy. So increased number of cells of adrenal gland at stage of pregnancy. So you have congenital. So when the child is still inside the womb, you have congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Epidemiology 5 type. Most common type is 21 hydroxylase deficiency. So you see that with congenital and adrenal hyperplasia there's only 21 hydroxylase deficiency, while in case of Addison disease we see 21 hydroxylase deficiency and it's 17 hydroxylase deficiency. So now here the consequence, you're going to have amenorrhea, oliguria violation. So pathophysiology now, what occurs here is that of Addison disease, normally the pathophysiology was because of 21 hydroxylase, but now with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, what happens here is that there is only the 21 hydroxylase deficiency. So what happens is that when the signal comes from adrenal corticotrophic hormone from the pituitary gland to the parathyroid to the adrenal gland for the production of cortisol, what happens is that the adrenal corticotrophic hormone is going to stimulate all the layers of the adrenal glands for the production. The zona glomerulosa is going to be activated. Zona fasciculata and zona reticular cells are going to be activated. Zona glomerulosa is normally produces mineralocorticoids such as aldosterone. Zona fasciculata normally produces glucocorticoids such as cortisol, while the zona reticularis produces androgens such as testosterone. Now what happens is that the patient does not have the 21 hydroxylase enzymes. So since the patient does not have the 21 hydroxylase enzyme, he cannot produce the mineralocorticoid and the glucocorticoids. The mineralocorticoids such as aldosterone, corticoids such as cortisol. So this is why the patient is only going to produce the androgens such as testosterone. And now, since the cortisol is what is the main factor which does a negative feedback on ACTH in the pituitary gland, there is still going to be, and since in this case there is low level of cortisol, the ACTH is going to be highly produced, and since ACTH is highly produced, it's going to cause excess production of the testosterone but no production of cortisol. So you see that this patient is going to have a masculine activity. So a female here, so in males you are going to have puberty occur very fast. You have puberty occur very fast. You have in females you have amenorrhea, and you have even oligomenorrhea. So these are the main signs and symptoms: the masculinization of the females, and you have in males early puberty, and you also have signs of hypoaldosteronism of the. You can also have sign of the reduction of aldosterone and reduction of cortisol. So investigation: increase the level of androgen but reduce the level of the other ones, mineralocorticoids, the aldosterone, cortisol. So basic description: condition deficiency of an enzyme of cortisol synthesis. Lack of cortisol stimulate production of ACTH, which is stimulate this adrenal, causing hyperplasia, and the hyperplasia is only causing an increase in the level of the androgens. Now, hyperaldosteronism. Now, the hyperaldosteronism is divided into three parts. We have primary hyperaldosteronism, we have secondary hyperaldosteronism, and we have adrenal neoplasm. Primary hyperaldosteronism is called Conn syndrome. Give causes of the primary hyperaldosteronism: you have the neoplasm and you have adrenal cortical hyperplasia. So neoplasm usually adrenal adenoma. So what are the laboratory findings? And we need to know that adrenal adenoma normally and the adrenal cortical adenoma are normally non-functional, but at times 20% of times it can be functional, causing Cushing syndrome, a primary Cushing syndrome, and can also cause a hyperaldosteronism. What are the laboratory findings? Hypernatremia, hypokalemia, because you have increased retention of sodium and you have reduction of calcium, of potassium. So the most common finding hypokalemia in primary and diuretic therapy. So secondary hyperaldosteronism give the causes: you have decreased renal perfusion in secondary cases. So you have decreased renal perfusion. Since you have decreased renal perfusion, you see that the renin-aldosterone and renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system is going to excessively activated. Since excessively activated, is going to cause, this is due to increased renin and going to cause increased aldosterone. Now, the adrenal neoplasms. The adrenal neoplasms, you have the different ones. So the adrenal neoplasm, we have adrenal adenoma, we have adenocortical carcinoma, and we have pheochromocytoma. Now, adrenal, all resulting to adrenal neoplasm, and the adrenal neoplasm are going to cause hyperandrogens, which is going to be, they are going to cause hyperandrogen, they are going to cause hyper secretion of aldosterone, Conn syndrome, and going to cause hyper secretion of cortisol, Cushing syndrome. Now, adrenal adenoma, you have important point. Most adrenal adenoma are non-functioning, and if the plasma adrenal ACTH is detected, a primary adrenal adenoma as a source of Cushing syndrome is unlikely. So if you see that ACTH is detected, so if a plasma ACTH is detected, the primary adrenal adenoma as source of Cushing syndrome is unrelated. So what's going to be the Cushing syndrome is a Cushing syndrome, is a ACTH dependent Cushing syndrome and not a primary one. A functioning adrenal adenoma will produce cortisol. A functioning adrenal adenoma will produce cortisol, which will feed back on the pituitary gland and inhibit ACTH production. So functioning adrenal adenoma will produce cortisol, which will feed back on and reduce the ACTH production. If you see that ACTH is instead high in this case, you realize that it is going to be an ACTH dependent Cushing syndrome, and so the cause is not primary. So in this case, if it's a ACTH dependent Cushing syndrome, and you realize that you go and do the adrenalectomy, you're going to cause another complication, which is going to be Nelson syndrome. Nelson syndrome is going to be excessive secretion of adrenocorticotropic hormone. So I'm going to cause the excess secretion of adrenal gland from the other adrenal gland that you have not removed. So that is going to be the condition. The macro gross structure, yellow nodules in adrenal cortex, that's the macro structure. Now the Conn syndrome. you have excess secretion of aldosterone. Now the sign and symptom, you have the sign of hypernatremia and the sign of hypokalemia. So sign of hypernatremia and sign of hypokalemia. So this is an error. Now investigation of hypokalemia and low plasma renin level. So conn syndrome, you must have low plasma renin level. If there is high plasma renin level, then it implies that it is secondary and not a primary. Conn syndrome is mainly primary with respect to an adrenal cortical adenoma or a hyperplasia. Give important point of adrenal cortical carcinoma. Now it's a carcinoma. We have a size is important in differentiating adrenal cortical carcinoma from adenoma. A tumor weight 100 grams is more likely to be carcinoma. So if you have a tumor which have a more than 100 grams, then you can say it's a carcinoma. Pheochromocytoma now is a form of carcinoma. So important points now. We have a tumor of adrenal medulla now. So this is adrenal cortical carcinoma. Now pheochromocytoma is involving a tumor of adrenal medulla. A tumor of adrenal medulla that's secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine causing episodic hypertension. So here you have norepinephrine epinephrine stimulation excessively high. So epidemiology, 10% are familial. 10% are familial. So you have the in epidemiology here you have 10% for pheochromocytoma. So 10% are familial, 10% are extra adrenal. So you have 10% are bilateral, 10% are malignal, 10% occur in childhood. So in risk factor cause precipitous tachycardia, palpitation, pounding headache. All these are cause of sympathetic causes. So in sympathetic stimulation causes, so you have precipitous tachycardia, you have palpitation, pounding headache, sweating, weight loss, and can be preceded by stress. So all these are in case of hypersecretion. The cause are these, and the clinical presentation are with respect to the clinical presentation to the sympathetic stimulation. Here you have yellow tan can be hemorrhagic, so the adrenal gland are still yellow in the medulla and can be hemorrhagic. Now free metanephrine. Now how do you diagnose the pheochromocytoma? We have free metanephrine because metanephrine, you said that metanephrine is a decomposition. When you decompose when there's production of epinephrine, metanephrine is on the decomposition series of epinephrine. So when there's decomposition of epinephrine, metanephrine is going to produce. So free metanephrine in the and non-metanephrine on this is going to show you that there is increased level of epinephrine and non-epinephrine. So you can expect a pheochromocytoma. You have to write free catecholamine, vinyl mandelic acid. So this other one you can see it in UI. Multiple now. So from here we have already seen all the different parts which are involved now in adrenal gland. So here you've seen all the different parts involved from adrenal gland, and you say thanks for your kind attention. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for the channel. Makers. Thank you.